It began on an ordinary night. No one saw it coming. The stars shifted, and then the skies filled with light. Millions looked up in awe, in terror, in disbelief. Because above every major city, alien ships appeared silently watching. No invasion, no words. Just presence heavy, suffocating, absolute. Then came the message, projected across every screen, every phone, every mind. Humans of Earth, you have 3 days to surrender. The voice was cold, artificial, certain. It was the sound of something that had conquered 100 worlds and expected us to kneel without a fight. But humanity didn't kneel. Not this time. In underground bunkers, in silent control rooms, leaders argued, soldiers prepared, and scientists whispered about weapons that were never meant to be used. Then the world's eyes turned to one man, the human ambassador. A diplomat, not a soldier. Calm, collected. He was chosen not because he was the strongest, but because he never lost hope in humanity. He walked alone into the chamber, a colossal hall filled with alien light. Their leader towered above him, a creature of translucent skin and burning eyes. Human, it said, your world is primitive. Your armies are nothing. You have 3 days to surrender. The ambassador said nothing. For a long moment, he simply looked around, at the alien council, at the hundreds of glowing eyes staring at him like insects before flame. And then, quietly, he smiled. 3 days, he said. You won't last 3 seconds. For a heartbeat, the galaxy went silent. Then the war began. Alien beams scorched the oceans. Cities burned. Skies cracked open. But humanity fought back. From the deep seas rose submarines armed with plasma railguns. From the deserts launched missiles glowing blue with fusion energy. From the clouds came stealth jets moving faster than sound. Every human, every soldier, every child became a symbol of resistance. Alien ships fell from the sky like burning stars. The first battle lasted only minutes, but those minutes changed everything because the aliens learned something that night, something they never understood about humans. We don't surrender. We adapt. We fight even when the fight is hopeless. They had technology. We had courage. They had numbers. We had unity. They believed fear was power. We believed power comes from standing together. As one species, one planet, one home. After 3 days, the skies cleared. The ships were gone. And in their silence, Earth stood unbroken. The ambassador stood on the ruins of the old city, watching the sunrise through the smoke. A child tugged his sleeve and asked, "Did we win?" He looked at her, smiled, and said softly, "No, we survived." That's what humans do. And somewhere far beyond the stars, the universe remembered those 6 words that started it all. You won't last 3 seconds. Smoke still rose from the cities. Ash floated in the wind like snow. But beneath that gray sky, the world was alive. The oceans were scarred, the mountains blackened. But in the ruins people rebuilt. Hands once used for war began to build homes. And voices once used for fear began to sing again. Humanity had been broken before, by its own greed, by its own mistakes. But this time, the enemy came from the stars. And we remembered what it meant to stand as one. No flags, no borders, no politics. Just Earth. For the first time in history, we weren't nations. We were a family. A species united by the fire that refused to die. The ambassador, the man who had stared down the universe, walked through the rebuilt city streets. Children ran past him, playing among the wreckage of alien machines. One of them stopped, looking at him curiously. "You really said it, didn't you?" the child asked. The old man smiled, his eyes tired but bright. "Yes," he said softly. And they listened. Years passed. The scars of war faded into monuments of remembrance. Alien metal melted and shaped into statues of hope. And above every capital, carved in stone, were the same 6 words that saved the world. You won't last 3 seconds. But that was not the end. The signal came again, faint, distant, trembling across galaxies. A distress call. Not from enemies this time, but from survivors. Aliens who had rebelled against their own empire, seeking refuge on the one planet that had defied them. And Earth answered. Ships once built for war now carried food, medicine, and light. The same hands that once fired weapons now offered help. Because humanity had learned something greater than victory. We had learned mercy. The ambassador, now frail and old, watched the stars from his balcony. The sky shimmered with ships not invaders, but allies. The universe had changed. A young reporter once asked him, "Sir, how did you know we could win? How did you know we would survive?" He smiled. "When you've seen what I've seen," he said, "you realize something powerful. Humans don't fight for conquest. We fight for each other. And that no empire can ever destroy." He looked up one last time, the stars reflecting in his eyes. And as his heart slowed, he whispered, "For as long as the universe breathes, let them remember who we are." The music swells soft, tragic, beautiful. Images of Earth glowing blue against the endless dark. Cities reborn. Children laughing. Alien and human hands building together. And across the stars, whispered like a promise, the words that began a legend. You won't last 3 seconds. Years turned into decades. The stars that once brought fear now carried hope. From the ashes of war, humanity rose stronger, wiser, united. We built ships that could cross light years. We turned battlefields into gardens, and scars into lessons written in the steel of our vessels. Every new dawn brought a question. What lies beyond? And every child born under Earth's healed sky was told the same story of the night the universe tried to silence us. And we answered with 6 words. Those words became our anthem, our vow, our truth. Generations later, humanity reached beyond the solar system. We built colonies on red deserts and icy moons. We met new civilizations, some kind, some cruel, some who looked upon us as legends, others who looked upon us as threats. But wherever we went, one thing never changed, our defiance against fear. They called us the children of the flame. They said we carried the fire that never dies. And they were right, because the human spirit doesn't fade with distance. It burns brighter with every challenge. There came a time when the darkness returned. Not the same enemy, but something worse. A swarm that devoured entire galaxies. Worlds turned silent. Stars blinked out. The ancient races fled. But not us. Human fleets gathered in orbit 1,000 ships under one banner. Commanders, pilots, engineers. Descendants of those who once survived the impossible. And as the swarm approached, their leader demanded surrender. The same words once spoken centuries ago. You have 3 days to kneel. The human commander, a woman born on Mars, smiled. She looked at the stars and whispered the same answer her ancestors had given. You won't last 3 seconds. And once again, the fire was unleashed. The battle raged across galaxies. Stars ignited. Planets shattered. But the humans held the line. Every second was a lifetime. Every breath was defiance. The swarm fell, not because of our weapons, but because of our will. And when it was over, silence filled the void once more. But it wasn't the silence of defeat. It was peace. Across the galaxy, the legend of Earth spread, of a small blue planet that dared to challenge the stars, and won. No longer were we just humans. We were the guardians of hope, the ones who stood when all others fled. And on the walls of every new world we built, etched in light and metal, were the same 6 words that began it all. You won't last 3 seconds. Centuries passed. Empires rose and fell among the stars. And still, the story of Earth lived on. To most, it was legend and myth about a blue world that faced the impossible and did not kneel. To others, it was faith, a reminder that courage is stronger than fear. The galaxy changed. Borders shifted. Species blended. But the fire that humans carried, that spark of defiance, kept spreading. Every new colony lit another beacon of hope. Every rescued world carried the mark of Earth, a small emblem, a silver circle, a promise. When a storm threatened a fragile planet, human ships appeared. When tyrants rose, human voices stood against them. We did not conquer. We inspired. They began to call us the keepers of the dawn, the ones who remember darkness but choose light. And yet, even heroes have questions. Even legends grow weary. One night, under a foreign sky, an old soldier looked up at the constellations and whispered, "Have we done enough? Have we become the very thing we once fought?" Silence answered him. Then the wind carried the faint laughter of a child, a reminder that the fight had never been about power, but about protecting life itself. And so humanity continued, not as rulers, but as guardians. We built schools on worlds that had forgotten learning. We planted trees on planets that had forgotten green. We taught others the same lesson the ambassador once taught the universe. That bravery is not the absence of fear. It is standing tall despite it. Now, when young travelers look out their ship windows at the blue glow of Earth, they do not see a distant planet. They see home, the birthplace of hope. Because somewhere in our history, a single voice defied the stars, 6 words that still echo through the void, carried by the breath of every living soul that refuses to kneel. You won't last 3 seconds. And so the legend lives, not in monuments or battles, but in the hearts of those who keep walking forward, one step, one dream, one sunrise at a time. Time moved differently after that. The stars drifted, galaxies turned like slow wheels of fire, and the age of humanity began to fade into myth. Our colonies stretched so far that light itself took centuries to reach them. We no longer called ourselves Terrans, or Martians, or colonials. We were simply the people of the flame. The universe changed around us. New life arose, new worlds found their voices. And still, the old story remained. Children on distant moons whispered it before sleep. Of the night Earth spoke to the sky and refused to kneel. Of the man who smiled at the impossible and said 6 words that reshaped eternity. Some said it was just a fable, but others believed something deeper. That those words carried a power, a vibration that lived in the fabric of time itself. On quiet nights, explorers claimed to hear an echo in the cosmic wind, a heartbeat that was not a sound, but a memory. Ships recorded faint transmissions, repeating every few thousand years. No origin, no source, just a voice, calm and human. You won't last 3 seconds. At first, scientists dismissed it. Then, slowly, they began to realize the signal came from nowhere and everywhere. It wasn't a recording. It was a pulse in spacetime, a message woven into the universe itself, as if creation remembered its bravest moment. And so, when the next darkness rose, a cosmic storm that devoured suns, the young races of the galaxy looked to the empty sky and waited. They expected the humans to return. But the skies stayed silent. The Earth was gone. Its cities empty. Its oceans calm. Its people vanished beyond the edge of known space. Only their monuments remained, glowing faintly in the dust, each one carved with the same 6 words. Then, on the eve of annihilation, the storm paused. A light broke through the dark. Not ships, not weapons, but energy, alive and endless. The voice came again, older, deeper, infinite. Not from one throat, but from 1,000 generations of us. The echo of every human heart that ever dared to stand. We are still here. We are the fire. We are humanity. And the storm broke apart. Stars reignited. Worlds breathed again. And across the cosmos, silence turned to song. Because even though the humans were gone, their courage had become part of the universe itself, a code written in light. Now, when a new species lifts its eyes to the stars, and the darkness whispers surrender, they remember the legend. They stand taller. They smile. And they answer with the same immortal words. You won't last 3 seconds. 1,000 years later, silence still ruled the void. No one had seen a human in living memory. Their worlds had turned to crystal and dust, their cities swallowed by vines and oceans. But the legend never died. In every corner of the galaxy, someone carried a piece of it. A story, a symbol, a spark. On a quiet mining moon, a child looked up at the sky. She'd never seen Earth. She didn't even know if it still existed. But when fear gripped her world, she whispered the old words, "You won't last 3 seconds." And somehow, it gave her strength. That whisper spread like light. Across ships, across worlds, across time. People began to speak it again not as defiance, but as faith. Then one night, the stars changed. A ripple of blue light swept across the void. Sensors failed. Engines stopped. And in the middle of the silence, something emerged from beyond known space. A fleet. No flags. No insignia. Just silver hulls glowing with the symbol of the flame. For a heartbeat, the galaxy froze. Then came a voice calm, steady, human. We never left. We were watching, waiting, learning. Now it's time to build again. The return of humanity was not a conquest. It was a sunrise. Ships landed on forgotten worlds. Ruins lit up as if waking from a dream. Children, who had grown up hearing myths, saw the faces of those myths step down from the light. They were different. Their bodies shaped by centuries of travel. Their eyes bright with the memory of 1,000 suns. But their hearts were the same. They still smiled before the impossible. They still reached out before they raised a weapon. And when the new age began, the humans didn't rule. They guided. They taught. They healed. They told the young species, the fire we carry isn't ours to keep. It's yours now. Protect it. Pass it on. And as the galaxy listened, the stars themselves seemed to glow a little warmer, as if remembering, because the story that started with one act of defiance had become the heartbeat of creation itself. Somewhere, a new world faced its first great threat. An empire demanded surrender. And as the young leader stepped forward, she smiled through the fear and said, just as the ambassador once had, "You won't last 3 seconds." The cycle continued. The flame endured. And across the endless night, the voice of humanity still echoed, soft, fearless, eternal.